Good morning, everyone. Very nice to see everyone. Can I just check you can hear okay at the back? Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah, so this is something very different, fantastic for Isabella there on the hydrogen side. The bit I'm going to talk about is actually from an ecosystem point of view, what kind of systems do you need to put in place to help those conversations to realize value for everyone, for investors, for clients, and for innovators itself. So different, hope you like it. There's a thing called the International Standard Organization, ISO 56002, which is a standard for innovation management, which is going to be launched in September of this year. I'm just going to talk through how that might help us as a community. First of all, I'll just go through innovation management. It's very different to innovation. Then go through maybe a little bit of systems thinking, this systematic and systems approach. And then actually, what do you do practically to get this thing inside organizations? So from an innovation management point of view, this isn't about the innovation itself, a wonderful example from Isabella, of course. It's not about the management generally, just management in a company, it's about both. So this is about how do you put a system in place to make sure that you're managing innovation across an entire ecosystem. Types of innovation, very important here. This is actually from 56010, goes into a little bit more of what types of innovation exist in the ecosystem. So there's sort of radical, disruptive and things on that side, product, services, processes, internal, external, and that's described reasonably well, I think, with a little diagram of how much value you think you could get out of this. What's the impact in terms of number of stakeholders, how many organizations, how many countries, is this something right through to the SDGs, how many SDGs could it actually match, and then the degree of change, so novelty. So this diagram really reflects everything. And we hope that this diagram will help the communication actually to end up what are you actually talking about. So TRLs, but actually it's a bit more than that. So this is all quoted from the standards, by the way. This is what the team's been working on. So barriers, I mean, hopefully you'll recognize these kind of barriers. One of them that I'd like to cover today is really the terminology and actually the language around, are we talking about the same kind of things? What stage of development? What kind of funding is available? What about private partnerships, which is a big thing in the UK at the moment? So these are the type of things that hopefully we'd like to overcome. And the way to overcome that is a systemic and systematic approach. So systemic in full systems thinking, break down the parts, actually an analytical approach, but also a synthetic approach to bring things together and actually go through the connections between leadership, planning a portfolio, going through from the intent, making sure maybe investors are in at the beginning of this intent and what we want to do, maybe the S&T strategy for the UK, what are we actually trying to solve, a very agile and configurable set of processes which are well defined, right through to value. Financial value, non-financial value, everything. So put a system in place. These documents are mostly out. 56001 is the one that's about to come out in September. I have the pleasure of working on the BSI committee, writing this one at the moment, which is quite tough with multiple countries. And the benefits of doing that through terminology, I won't read all of them out, but terminology through better collaboration. And so we can understand each other, have better conversations. So how do you do that practically to put this in place in an organization? You go through understanding what you're actually trying to do from the vision. Maybe you want to have a look at an organization or an ecosystem. What is the level of maturity? Most organizations have something in place already, and it's actually really important to understand where you are now before you just put something in place. Then we might talk about operating models. Do you have a centralized innovation service? Do you try and say everyone should innovate? How does that actually operate? Through to finding the excellent people who are innovating in organizations already, of course, and finding those and giving them some support is really important. So then about building the system, I would advocate put in place 56002 or 1 in your organization. That means you can talk to other organizations. That means you can build an ecosystem out, say, in hydrogen, into France, into Europe, into the world, and we can have better conversations, but without being constrained. It is a standard, but it has adaptability in that. So connect up those systems. Start with a strategy. These are the elements of a strategy from the ISO. So write a document called an innovation strategy to understand how to do that. That's where you start, and that's my pitch. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we don't have any questions that come through on Slido, but again, as this is a slightly more informal environment, are there any questions that we can take from the room? And we have a roving mic that's coming over to you. We should just leave it with you.
John, fantastic. I just wondered if we've piloted any in the port sector.
We do have a confidential project where it's being piloted right now in Europe, and happy to share one-to-one afterwards if you like.
Great, thank you. I think I'm known for saying to the chief exec, I've met a great startup, but we don't know how to put it through the funnel.
Thank you.
Hello. One of the great problems is with any ISO issues is the intellectual property rights and being able to protect them. And sometimes it's very, very intrusive in terms of issues about how to manufacturing facilities, et cetera, which can become very, very intrusive. How do you cope with that?
There's a specific section on intellectual property in the main requirements, and there's a whole standard that addresses that, which is bringing in best practice around that. And it's basically have an intellectual asset strategy of which property is a subset of the assets around that. So that is covered. I'm happy to go into a bit more detail another time.
I liked it.
Let's do it. I'll see you afterwards.
Okay. Do we have any last questions before we move on? No? In that case, I'd really like to thank you very much for joining us for this, the first of these innovation pitches that we've done. I'd really like to thank both of my guests, Isabella Tattoo and John Rains. And thank you. Yeah.